we just take a second to appreciate how great my ass looks in these jeans? I think we should all be talking about that, honestly. Why do I have a jewelry business when I can just have an ass?
Have you ever had a crush on a celebrity? Most people have, and most people handle it the normal way. They tell their friends say, "Aww," and then everyone moves on with their lives because there are groceries to buy and bills to pay, and the celebrity in question does not know you exist, and that's just how it works. Tyler Catastrophe did not handle it the normal way. Tyler Catastrophe heard a man laugh in the background of someone else's video in 2019.
I have had a crush on Will Gold since 2019 when I heard him laugh in the background of someone else's video, and it felt like life itself leaned in to listen.
That was all it took. Something about that laugh convinced Tyler he had found the person he wanted to spend his life with. To him, it was proof that every quality he wanted in a partner existed in one person. From that moment on, for the next 7 years, nobody else was ever seriously in the running. Not the ex-fiancée whose engagement eventually fell apart, not the one person he later described as genuinely wonderful but incompatible, not the people who showed real interest in him along the way. None of them mattered because Tyler had already made up his mind. The person he wanted was a musician living in Brighton, whose laugh he had heard exactly once in the background of somebody else's video.
In this video, he's like, I'm a one person, one love. Other people have had crushes on me. Other people have tried to ask me out, and I've been trying to go on dates, but I just can't. I just love Will Gold. And then in the same video, he goes, I'm trying not to be parasocial about this. You're a parasocial, fine.
Now, if this was the whole story, we would not be here. A parasocial celebrity crush is strange, yes. A 7-year one that is actively getting in the way of real relationships is stranger, but the internet has seen stranger things and moved on. What the internet could not move on from was everything else.
I do not think that Wilbur Soot is an abuser.
Because while Tyler had spent 7 years quietly building this fantasy, the man at the center of it was becoming the subject of an entirely different conversation. Wilbur Soot, the Minecraft creator turned lead singer of the indie band Lovejoy, was accused by his ex-girlfriend in 2024 of abusive behavior. The allegations were detailed. People close to him publicly backed up parts of her account, in some cases without even realizing what they were confirming. Then Wilbur released a statement of his own, one that many people read as less of a denial and more of an apology from someone who hadn't fully accepted what he was apologizing for. Most people looked at all those allegations and came to their own conclusions. Tyler looked at the same allegations, described himself as a survivor of abuse, argued that his own experiences gave him a unique perspective, and uploaded a TikTok video explaining why he believed Wilbur Soot was innocent.
The video this comment is on is about how I do not think that Wilbur Soot is an abuser. And it took a lot for me to post it. I had to think a lot about how to say what I wanted to say.
But defending the man he had spent 7 years obsessing over wasn't even the strangest thing Tyler did. That distinction belongs to the audition video, the one where Tyler, who had been rebuilding his singing voice after a car accident, uploaded an unsolicited audition to become the second vocalist of Wilbur's band.
We can make such a pretty picture. Oh so happy, oh so happy.
Lovejoy never responded. Tyler later insisted the audition had been a joke. Now that wasn't just all to this obsession, because there was a GoFundMe. It was titled Help a Disabled Trans Guy Escape Texas with a goal of $22,000. According to the campaign, Tyler had been given an incredible opportunity in England. There was supposedly a job waiting for him at an art studio, a chance to work alongside established artists. All he needed was enough money to make the move. There was only one problem. The job didn't exist. The artist Tyler credited for the opportunity later released a public statement explaining what had really happened. Tyler had visited his studio for about 30 minutes in 2022. Stuart described him as polite and enthusiastic. When Tyler casually asked about work, Stuart gave what most people would recognize as a polite response, saying that if he makes it back to England, they would talk. According to Stuart, that wasn't a job offer. It wasn't even the beginning of one. It was simply an attempt to be encouraging, and he never expected it to become the basis for someone selling their belongings and launching a crowdfunding campaign. This entire drama sent Tyler into a frenzy because he was now on the brink of homelessness, simply because the job he believed was waiting for him in England had never been waiting for him at all. But by this point, the internet had stopped focusing only on Wilbur, Lovejoy, and the GoFundMe. People had started looking at Tyler himself, and they found a long list of identity claims that raised almost as many questions as everything else combined. Tyler describes himself as white passing because his father is Portuguese. That explanation immediately confused people. Portugal is in Europe. Portuguese is a nationality, not a separate racial category. The ancestry claims were even more ambitious. At various points, Tyler claimed to be descended from King Edward I of England, Queen Margaret of France, Robert the Bruce of Scotland, and Edgar Allan Poe. The Poe claim drew particular attention because Edgar Allan Poe had no children, and neither did any of his siblings, leaving historians with a fairly well-documented family line that ends in the 19th century.
Family history is very large and complicated, which of course has a lot of downsides, but it does have the small upside of being related to a lot of dead famous people. Edgar Allan Poe, Robert the Bruce of Scotland, and apparently my uncle is currently mapping another family line.
There was even a period when Tyler identified himself as Two-Spirit, a cultural and spiritual identity specific to many indigenous nations.
Referring to myself as Two-Spirit as a way of honoring the weight of my own soul and the way it guides me home. With the blessing of my deadliest auntie, by the way.
That did not go over well with indigenous creators who challenged the claim almost immediately.
If you are not Native American or from Native American descent, you are not allowed to claim the term Two-Spirit. I don't care if you're from Oklahoma. I don't care if you are close to the tribe. I don't care if you are Native adjacent. None of that matters.
By now, the conversation wasn't really about Wilbur anymore. It wasn't about the audition or the fundraiser or even the identity claims. It became something much harder to explain. How did a celebrity crush turn into an audition, a crowdfunding campaign, a non-existent job, royal bloodlines, indigenous identity, and one of the internet's most bizarre rabbit holes? More importantly, and where exactly do you draw the line between delusion, self-deception, and simply telling yourself a story for so long that it becomes impossible to separate it from reality? To fully wrap your head around this character, Tyler Catastrophe, you first have to understand the person at the center of all of this. Will Gold, better known online as Wilbur Soot, or depending on which side of 2024 you're standing on, the Brighton Biter, a nickname the internet gave him after the allegations and one that has followed him ever since. Before any of that happened, Wilbur was one of the biggest creators in the British Minecraft scene. His rise was unusually fast. He first gained attention through SootHouse, a comedy channel where he and a group of friends reacted to Reddit posts and internet culture with a style of humor that quickly found an audience. The channel exploded, and Wilbur's audience grew right alongside with it. Then came the Dream SMP. If you weren't online during 2020, Dream SMP probably sounds like another Minecraft server. It wasn't. It became one of YouTube's biggest collaborative storytelling projects, pulling in millions of viewers who treated the evolving roleplay almost like an ongoing television series. Wilbur wasn't simply another player, he became one of its defining characters. His storylines were dramatic, his performances stood out, fans became deeply invested not only in the fictional character but in Wilbur himself. Now that audience followed him everywhere, including music. The side project quickly became something much bigger. Lovejoy wasn't a novelty band built around a YouTuber's audience. It became a legitimate success in its own right, selling out shows, attracting listeners outside the Minecraft community, and collecting tens of millions of streams. Heading back to October 2022, Feats had the pleasure to cover live at Leeds in the city a venue hopping festival that is sure to discover tons of new talent. Here is where we saw Lovejoy. Fronted by Will Gold and composed of Ash Caboso, Joe Goldsmith, and Mark Boardman, this Brighton-based band are coming off the leg of their first Northern UK tour and exclusive London and Brighton dates, selling out each venue in sheer minutes. This is a band that you don't want to miss. Playing their biggest hits, One Day and Sex Sells, joined with their trumpeters, Leandra and Zoe on stage, Lovejoy put on more than a show. By 2023, Wilbur had built something most internet creators never manage. He wasn't simply famous online anymore, he had become the kind of public figure people built communities around. And for one person watching from Texas, that admiration slowly stopped looking like admiration and started becoming something else entirely. By early 2024, Wilbur Soot had built the kind of career most internet creators spend years chasing. Lovejoy was selling out shows, his audience stretched well beyond Minecraft, he had millions of followers, a successful band, and one of the most loyal fan communities on the internet. But then everything changed.
Hello, I want to talk about something today that I'm very nervous. I feel sweaty. I had a sweater on, I had to take it off.
On February 21st, 2024, creator Shelby Grace, better known as Shubble, went live to talk about an abusive relationship. She never said the man's name. She didn't have to.
There were a lot of things wrong in this relationship that I endured some pretty terrible treatment, and I might touch on some things here and there.
The relationship, she explained, hadn't started with obvious warning signs. Her partner had a habit of biting people. He described it as affectionate. According to Shelby, he had done it since childhood. His own mother apparently confirmed as much. At first, it seemed unusual more than alarming. Then it escalated.
I thought that it would only happen once, and he started biting me more and more over a period of time, sort of throughout the whole relationship, and accidents of him biting too hard and really hurting me happened more and more frequently.
The bites became harder, more frequent. They left bruises that friends noticed almost immediately. Shelby said he would poke at those bruises, joke about them, even laughed that it looked like he was abusing her. Eventually, they created a safe word so he would know when to stop. According to Shelby, he stopped listening to that too.
And when I asked him to stop again, this time he said, "This is who he is. He isn't going to change."
She described saying the safe word while he continued biting anyway, grinding his teeth into her skin after she'd already told him to stop. By that point, very few people watching were still wondering who she was talking about. The biting habit had been visible for years. As viewers started comparing Shelby's account with years of old clips, the pictures came together remarkably quickly. Then Wilbur responded. "In the past week, a series of allegations have been made over my conduct from an ex-girlfriend. I want to emphasize that although I feel it fair to offer my perspective, this person's feelings are completely valid. I've taken my time sharing this statement as I wanted to process and respond respectfully and with the hope to gain a deeper understanding for the situation. During our relationship's final months, I regrettably became slobbish, disrespectful, and selfish. These actions caused a lot of pain to my ex-girlfriend, and I've since sought therapy to address these behaviors, making significant lifestyle changes to rectify my past actions. I have come to realize how much my past behavior hurt this person, but I truly, compassionately believe I have made great strides from the person I once was, and hope I can continue to grow and improve on this trajectory." His statement confirmed what most people had already assumed. It also made the situation considerably worse. Rather than focusing on Shelby, much of the statement focused on himself, his therapy, his personal growth, his commitment to becoming a better person. The apology came later, carefully worded and heavily qualified. To many readers, it felt less like someone confronting what had happened and more like someone trying to limit the damage. Shelby, on her part, rejected that framing almost immediately. From what I understand, your slobbish, disrespectful, and selfish behavior also delved deep into emotional abuse, and the fact that you only refer to the biting as abuse and refer to it as an allegation shows you fundamentally do not understand the pain you caused.
What I endured was so much more than just slobbishness and disrespect. It's offensive to downplay it that much. And in my opinion, the most.
She explained that the issue had never been biting by itself. The issue was being hurt repeatedly, having her pain dismissed, being told she simply had a low pain tolerance, and watching a safe word become meaningless once it was no longer convenient to respect it. Other women later shared similar experiences. These past few years have been difficult, but I finally feel safe enough to speak about my experience with Wilbur. Hello, I'm Alice. I dated Wilbur back in 2019, and I want to speak out about my experience. I felt like I couldn't talk about this sooner because I was scared of his public influence and the potential backlash from fans, but now after hearing Shelby's story, seeing the support she's been shown, and admiring her bravery, I finally feel safe to break my silence on our relationship. Silently in the corner of his room waiting for him to go offline, he would say condescending things to me about my interests and the type of content I created, as if he didn't just take it, or me, seriously, and would only be enthusiastic about his future plans with music and desire for fame. I never felt like he was encouraging towards me or any of my goals, and in the last few months, he made me feel extremely unlovable and unwanted. I had suffered with self-harm tendencies in 2019, he ignored the marks on my body, and only took interest in retelling his own life struggles. I also experienced the biting habit, which has already been elaborated on by Shelby. Friends distanced themselves, collaborators quietly disappeared, the audience that had spent years building Wilbur into one of the internet's biggest creators began moving on almost overnight. Lovejoy continued releasing music, Wilbur remained online, but the version of Wilbur Soot that had dominated YouTube through the Dream SMP era was effectively over. For most people, that was where the story ended. They stopped watching, unfollowed, and simply moved on. Tyler Catastrophe did the exact opposite. 4 months had already passed. Shelby's stream had come and gone. Wilbur had released his statement. More women had come forward. Most people had reached whatever conclusion they were going to reach and quietly moved on. Tyler did the opposite. He opened TikTok, hit record, and spent 6 minutes explaining why Wilbur Soot was not an abuser.
And as someone who has been abused, kind of a lot, I'm gonna explain the difference. Because if you don't know the difference, there are a lot of people who will try to use you as a weapon against the people they don't like.
Tyler based almost his entire argument on one idea. He had survived abuse himself. Because of that, he believed he understood abuse well enough to recognize it when he saw it. So he looked at Shelby's story and decided it wasn't abuse. That's where a lot of people took issue with his video. Living through abuse doesn't automatically make someone qualified to judge another person's experience. It doesn't mean every survivor reaches the same conclusions. Tyler treated his own experience like a measuring stick. If Shelby's story didn't match his, then in his view, it didn't fit the label. The problem was that Tyler wasn't in that relationship. He didn't witness what happened. He only had the same public information everyone else had. Yet he spoke with so much confidence like he was delivering the final verdict. Before the For You page collectively discovered Tyler Catastrophe in 2026, Tyler Catastrophe had already been building something. Not quietly. Quietly is not really in this person's operating vocabulary, but without the kind of audience that turns ordinary TikToks into internet discourse. The content already existed. The personality definitely existed. The millions of people who would eventually encounter all of it simply hadn't wandered into that corner of TikTok yet. Tyler Solana, a surname he chose rather than inherited, which will become relevant later, is a 27-year-old transgender artist from Oklahoma now living in Texas and, judging by a significant portion of his online presence, trying very hard not to stay there. He describes himself as a lifelong musician, a published poet, an exhibited artist, a jewelry designer, a bead worker, and generally someone with an impressive number of creative skills. That is a remarkable number of careers to fit into one biography. Tyler wears every one of them with complete confidence, and confidence, as you'll notice, is a recurring theme throughout this story. The jewelry is the main business. Handmade beaded necklaces, chokers, bracelets, and earrings sold through Tyler's online shop at prices that have become almost as famous as the person selling them. An $879 necklace, a $575 choker, one piece listed for $1,349. Tyler's explanation has never really changed. He claims the materials are high quality, the designs are original, and the skills behind them took years to develop. If you ask Tyler, the prices make perfect sense.
It is wild how wrong some of y'all are about what I do. And maybe that's because I've been downplaying it for so long. I think it's funny to oversimplify and just say I put beads on a string for a living, but this? Let's remind you who I am today, huh? The piece I'm currently wearing is $575, took 2 people, months of work, has a centerpiece sunstone cabochon, hand beaded and backed in suede, got cat's eye, dyed jade, rose quartz, carnelian, and rhodochrosite.
If you ask the internet, the answers become a little more varied.
That really pisses me off about Tyler Catastrophe is his beaded work is up to $700, right? Insane prices for a little beaded choker. And here's the thing, I've seen full professional fursuit heads made by professional creators that take professional commissions for less money than that.
Tyler also paints. One of the paintings in his shop is listed for $32,000. It is a painting, though not a bad one. Whether it's a $32,000 painting is where the conversation tends to begin. The interesting part isn't even the price, it's how certain Tyler is that the price is correct. By this point, he seems to have reached a place where the value of his work is no longer something to be negotiated with the public. The number is the number. Whether anyone else agrees with it is almost beside the point.
Fuck that guy, it's $32,000 now. I'm not going any lower. Okay? Yeah, I think that's how I want to live my life now. Fuck them.
That clip explains a surprising amount of how Tyler processes criticism. It's an attitude that seems almost impossible to shake. Then you reach the event that reshaped Tyler's entire life, and suddenly you understand where some of it came from. October 2019 changed the course of Tyler's life. He was riding a motorcycle when it collided with an SUV. The crash shattered his ribcage. Surgeons replaced 2 ribs with titanium. Tyler said he's lived with chronic pain ever since, and sometimes has to consciously remind himself to breathe because his body doesn't always do it automatically. The accident ended his time in college, forced him out of his band, and took away the singing voice he spent years trying to recover. None of that deserves to be minimized. What becomes important later is how Tyler tells the story. In Tyler's version, the SUV driver caused the crash. The official report reached a different conclusion. People eventually located it because Tyler had publicly shared enough details about the date, location, and vehicles involved. According to the report, Tyler failed to yield while making a left turn and was found at fault. It also noted there was a 7-year-old girl in the SUV. Some reports also claimed Tyler didn't have a motorcycle license at the time. None of those details change what happened to his body. They do introduce something that keeps appearing throughout this story. Tyler often tells events from a perspective where he's the person wronged. The details that complicate that version usually don't enter the conversation until someone else finds them. Now, before TikTok, there was Tumblr, and Tumblr did what Tumblr has always done. It archived everything. The version of Tyler that existed there still went by Emily and hadn't transitioned yet, but one theme showed up again and again across years of posts. Tyler had become deeply invested in the idea that people kept seeing him as the wrong race. Tyler explained this several times. His father, he says, is half Portuguese. That makes Tyler 1/4 Portuguese. From there, Tyler arrived at the conclusion that he was white passing, which is an interesting conclusion because Portugal is in Western Europe and Portuguese people are white. But Tyler treated this as something genuinely painful. He wrote about feeling disconnected from a culture people supposedly couldn't recognize because everyone assumed he was white. Then one day, a man in a restaurant asked if he was Mexican. Tyler said no, Portuguese. The man replied that made sense. That interaction made Tyler's night. The man probably forgot the conversation before he got the bill, while Tyler remembered it for years. It ended up immortalized on Tumblr as proof that somebody had finally seen him the way he wanted to be seen. The Portuguese story was only the beginning. Tyler has also claimed to be 27 generations removed from King Edward I of England and Queen Margaret of France. Robert the Bruce of Scotland also makes an appearance. So does Edgar Allan Poe. The Edgar Allan Poe one deserves a quick pause, because Poe never had children. Neither did his siblings. His bloodline ended in the 19th century, which kind of makes Tyler's claim of being descended from Edgar Allan Poe difficult to map onto the existing family tree.
Family history is very large and complicated, which of course has a lot of downsides, but it does have the small upside of being related to a lot of dead famous people. Edgar Allan Poe, Robert the Bruce of Scotland, and apparently my uncle is currently mapping another family line. So now I know that I'm also 27 generations descended from King Edward I of England and Queen Margaret of France, apparently.
So at various points, Tyler had described himself as someone navigating the experience of being white passing because of his Portuguese ancestry. So at various points, Tyler has described himself as someone navigating the experience of being white passing because of his Portuguese ancestry, while also tracing his family back to English royalty. Those are certainly two identities to keep organized, but then the conversation moved to Oklahoma.
I was born and raised in Oklahoma, arguably the most indigenous state, and somewhere in the years of educating myself and learning the stories and the histories and finding the truths and the lies I was taught.
Everything Tyler says about Oklahoma's history is true. The state has one of the largest indigenous populations in the United States. The land has an extraordinarily complicated history of removal, displacement, and forced relocation. None of that is in dispute. What happened next is, Tyler began describing a spiritual connection to the indigenous people of Oklahoma. He referred to their culture as ours. Eventually, he began identifying as Two-Spirit. That is where the internet stopped nodding along. The explanation centered on an aunt who had supposedly given Tyler permission. Except she wasn't his aunt. She was a woman Tyler had met on TikTok who eventually became a friend. Auntie turned out to be honorary, not biological or cultural, just internet auntie.
Alive, and referring to myself as Two-Spirit as a way of honoring the weight of my own soul and the way it guides me home, with the blessing of my deadliest auntie, by the way, is something that you would consider morally corrupt, then I don't think we will ever understand each other.
The response from indigenous creators arrived almost immediately. Two-Spirit is not a personality type, neither is it a spiritual aesthetic or label people adopt because they feel connected to the land. It's a cultural identity that belongs specifically to indigenous communities.
My people came from Nebraska and we were forcibly removed to Oklahoma. We are one of the nations that reside in Oklahoma, and I am here to tell you this motherfucker is not two-spirited. Goodbye.
Tyler had also been selling jewelry as beadwork. Indigenous creators pointed out that beadwork is not simply putting beads together, it's a traditional art form with techniques, symbolism, and patterns that carry cultural meaning. People argued Tyler was borrowing from those traditions while presenting himself as someone with a connection he had never been able to demonstrate. Tyler eventually backed away from the claim. He said he had posted the video in 2023, realized almost immediately that it was a mistake, believed he had deleted it, and didn't realize it was still online until people resurfaced it during the wider controversy in 2026.
So, firstly, I do not refer to myself as Two-Spirit. I have mistakenly done so in the past, in 2023, I think.
And this is where all of the separate stories begin to connect. Together, they paint the picture of someone who never seemed especially interested in being the person they already were. Tyler consistently reached for an identity that felt rarer, more complicated, and more meaningful than the ordinary answer. Plenty of people reinvent themselves online. Most do it quietly. Tyler documented the entire process and then posted it. So from here onwards, things start getting really disturbing. Because on February 27th, 2026, Tyler posted a TikTok. It was about a crush. More specifically, it was about a crush on Will Gold, better known as Wilbur Soot, that had been quietly running Tyler's romantic life since 2019. According to Tyler, it started the moment he heard Wilbur laugh in the background of someone else's video. He described the moment by saying it felt like life itself leaned in to listen.
I have had a crush on Will Gold since 2019 when I heard him laugh in the background of someone else's video, and it felt like life itself leaned in to listen.
The man wasn't even the focus of the video. He was an ambient sound, a bit of background noise that happened to make it into the final edit. Somehow, that was enough. Enough for Tyler to decide he had found the person he'd been waiting for. And 7 years later, that conclusion has remained remarkably resistant to new information. The consequences of this, as Tyler explains in the video with a funny level of self-awareness, is that he has essentially been unable to develop romantic interest in anyone else for 7 years. A terrible engagement ended, one other relationship happened briefly and didn't work out.
Which is really inconvenient for me, because I am very much a one soul at a time kind of person, so once I develop a crush, virtually no one else stands a chance ever. And at the time, I had just broken off a terrible engagement to a guy who didn't even fucking like me. And since then, I have only briefly dated one other person, who was wonderful, but it didn't work out.
Multiple people have expressed interest, but none of them stood a chance because Tyler already had someone in mind, and that someone was a musician in Brighton whom Tyler had met for 7 minutes at a concert Tyler paid to attend.
But in like the 7 minutes that we spoke to each other, one, every time we made eye contact, I thought my heart was gonna fucking burst out of my chest and fly away.
The meeting itself was exactly what you'd expect from a meet and greet. A few minutes, a quick conversation, and a photograph. Wilbur did what performers do at paid meet and greets. He was just friendly, polite, and engaged with the person standing in front of him before moving on to the next person in line. Not knowing he had just met someone would be stuck with him parasocially for the rest of whenever this would be.
I paid to... I feel like I'm taking crazy pills?
Yes, you are Tyler. At some point before the main controversy, Tyler made a video auditioning to become Lovejoy's second vocalist. This was not a joke initially, despite later being reclassified as one when Lovejoy did not respond with an invitation to join the band. Tyler started with explaining who he is and why Lovejoy should consider him. The energy he gave is the energy of someone who has been thinking about this pitch for a while and feels good about how it landed.
Absolutely no idea if one of my favorite bands might want a second vocalist, but I do know I am crazy enough to ask. So hi, Lovejoy. Do you want a second vocalist? My name is Tyler Solona, I'm 26 years old, I live in Texas, but I'm trying to move to England anyway. I'm a massive extrovert, I've been performing since I was 10, and in 2019 I was actually a semi-professional vocalist, but then had to spend almost 5 years getting my voice back after losing it completely because someone hit me with their car.
Always searching the silent type. How do you all make it look so easy? You open your hearts up so quickly it scares me. She's an artist, paints across my chest, goes to party.
Now, this is exactly where the story changes because this TikTok by itself looks like an unusually intense celebrity crush. When you scroll back a little, you'll find everything else that makes this guy's parasocial relationship disturbing, pointing towards someone who had spent years arranging parts of his life around a person who, in any meaningful sense, did not know he existed. England was always part of that story, or at least Tyler says it was. After visiting in 2022, he decided he wanted to move there permanently, more specifically, Brighton, which just so happens to be where Wilbur Soot lives, an observation the internet noticed almost immediately. Tyler noticed that people noticed, so he responded with an entire TikTok explaining why Brighton had absolutely nothing to do with Wilbur.
Love them, I adore them so fucking much. Like wanting to move to Brighton specifically when I moved to England because I love Brighton FC so much.
Anyway, I'm a big soccer fan. I call it football, but we're in America and most of my following is American, so and my main team is OKC Energy FC. Love Oklahoma, let's go. But you know what England has? Fucking Premier League, baby, let's go. But I was thinking about it and I was like, you know what? I don't have a team over there. I don't know who to root for. I should do some research. And so I did, and I think I've landed on Brighton. They're the fucking Seagulls. It is amazing. And they're 6th in the Premier, so they're doing pretty well. And they are literally the Seagulls. That's literally the best. This is the obvious one.
The football explanation became unexpectedly thorough. To be fair, Tyler does know football. He refereed for 6 years. He even has a paid membership to the Dutch national team's supporters club.
I'll have you know, I know a good soccer team when I see one, because I spent my first 18 years in and around a pitch almost every day for 18 years, playing, spectating, reffing. I was legally licensed for 6 years. I've reffed hundreds of games, so many. And I didn't get to see any Premier League games when I was in England last year, and I tried. I was very upset.
He knows enough about Brighton that accusing him of inventing the interest on the spot would probably be unfair. The problem wasn't that he liked Brighton. The problem was that Brighton happened to contain the exact person he'd spent the previous 7 years talking about. Ironically, the biggest obstacle to Tyler's move wasn't immigration. It was a job that existed much more clearly in Tyler's version of events than it did in anyone else's. To help make the move happen, Tyler launched a GoFundMe. The title was "Help a Disabled Trans Guy Escape Texas." The goal was $22,000. The fundraiser explained that an incredible opportunity was waiting for him in England, a chance to build his career and finally leave Texas behind. Funny thing is, people donated because they believed that next step already existed, but it didn't. The opportunity centered around British artist Stuart Semple. If you've spent any time around the online art world, you've probably heard the name. Stuart is the founder of Culture Hustle, the company behind some of the most famous specialty paints in the world, including the Blackest Black that kicked off an entire public feud with Anish Kapoor. According to Tyler, Stuart had offered him a job. The story, at least on Tyler's side, was simple. He visited Stuart's studio in England in 2022, impressed everyone there, and left believing he'd soon be moving back to work alongside them. That belief became the foundation for everything that followed.
Asked if I could work for him, and he said that we could figure something out. And he knew that I had a deadline to make it happen, but once that deadline started approaching, he completely ghosted me.
Tyler believed it enough to start dismantling his life in Texas. People don't usually sell off their lives because someone might hire them. They do it because they're convinced the answer's already yes. Then Stuart saw what had been circulating online. His version of events was significantly less dramatic. Tyler had visited the studio for about 30 minutes. They chatted. Then Tyler asked whether there might be work one day. Stuart replied that if Tyler ever found himself back in England, they could talk. That's it. Later, Stuart's assistant followed up and made things even clearer. There wasn't a position available. No offer, contract, or job quietly waiting in Brighton. Just a polite conversation that, for most people, would have ended exactly where it happened. Stuart seemed genuinely baffled that the situation had snowballed this far. So baffled, in fact, that he responded the only way an artist like Stuart Semple would. He painted it. Literally, a black painting titled "Not a Job Offer." For 3 days, anyone who wanted one could buy their own copy. There are cease and desist letters, there are public statements, there are apology videos. Very few internet dramas conclude with a commemorative artwork.
So, about these job offers, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's applied for a job offer. I'm going to be really busy painting them all for all of you, and I can't wait for you to get them. I'm going to switch it off tonight though, so if you do want one, don't miss out.
The reason Stuart felt like he had to step in becomes obvious once you hear Tyler's version, because Tyler wasn't describing an awkward misunderstanding, he was describing a betrayal. A world-famous artist had offered him his dream job, then vanished. That disappearance had almost left him homeless. Listening to Tyler and Stuart back to back almost feels like hearing two people remember completely different afternoons.
Definitely just it myself. I wound up blaming Stuart for a lot of things that were entirely on me.
Eventually, Tyler did what almost every internet main character eventually has to do. He made an apology video, 10 minutes long enough to address everything, short enough that some things inevitably slipped through the cracks. At this point, the situation had become impossible to ignore, and for the first time in years, Tyler was no longer controlling the narrative. The internet was.
Reach, I made a lot more mistakes, and every time I thought it was going to be okay, something else happened.
The Two-Spirit section was the cleanest. Tyler admitted it had been a mistake, apologized, explained how it happened, accepted responsibility. Whether people accepted the explanation is a different question, but at least everyone was discussing the same reality.
Firstly, I do not refer to myself as Two-Spirit. I have mistakenly done so in the past, in 2023, I think, in a video I honestly thought I deleted, because I realized right after I posted the video.
The Wilbur section was where things became more complicated.
There was a lot of harm being done just from the communities and fandoms surrounding this. And I stayed away from anything other than Shelby's statement, because with anything else, I just felt that there wasn't enough information and a lot of conflicting information that I didn't fully understand and didn't want to speak on because I didn't understand it. And because I saw a lot of people treating Wilbur's statement as an admission of guilt, when to me it did seem genuine and like he honestly didn't understand the extent of the harm he had done and was doing therapy and stuff to be better in the future, I felt very strongly about the way it was being treated from an outside perspective. And I saw a lot of uninvolved people getting hurt. And while my intention with that video was to reduce harm, I wound up letting my own perspective and interpretation kind of take over the video. Things that got left out, things that didn't need to be left in, things that should have been said very differently, and honestly, I should have just left it alone.
Because Tyler never really walked back the actual conclusion. The video that had turned him into one of the internet's least popular defense attorneys wasn't built around the idea that Wilbur had done nothing wrong. It was built around the idea that Wilbur wasn't an abuser. That distinction mattered enormously to Tyler, and it continued to matter during the apology. The only criticism he accepted was that he shouldn't have inserted himself into the conversation, not that his conclusion had been, well, wrong.
Sooner. So, to everyone who's been just trying to hold me accountable, thank you. With everything else that was happening, most of the very valid criticisms got buried, and it all just got very away from me very quickly. So again, thank you. And while I know that there's really no one doing any of this, my platforms are usually a pretty positive place. It's always just been a bunch of artists supporting each other. And while I am gonna step away for a few days to just be with my family and sort out some more personal things, hopefully, eventually, it can be that again. But for now, thank you again. And I promise I will always be the person who is open to learning and doing better in the future. And I am incredibly sorry that I allowed myself to lose sight of that. I hope that life is kind to you. Okay, love you, bye.